Hello and welcome to our webinar, Google Analytics Fundamentals, a Quick Start Guide, presented by Higher Education Marketing. And if you're not familiar with us at HEM, we're a full service digital marketing company that focuses exclusively on working with schools. So that means all types of schools, any type of educational institution around the world and in multiple languages. My name is Scott Cross. I'm Regional Manager for North America, and I'm presenting today alongside my colleague Archie Pollock, HEM's UK and Europe Regional Manager. Hello, Archie.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining.
So we'll have your microphones on mute throughout the webinar. This just allows us to get through the content more fluently. But we do ask that you send us your questions throughout the webinar, and you can do that in the menu bar, the GoToWebinar menu bar on the side of your screen. Click on the section that says questions, type your question in, and please do it during the webinar, because at the end we'll open that box up and we'd love to see questions already there. We'll be happy to answer your questions as they pop up. Good time to remind you that everyone who is attending, even those who weren't able to make it but registered, you will receive a recording of this webinar, and you'll also receive a copy of the slide deck. So you'll get that in the email in the coming days. And with that, let's go ahead and get going. What do you say?
Sounds good to me. Yeah, I think the best place to start, Scott, is if we talk about why analytics is a useful tool, particularly for schools, and what's unique about education with regard to analytics, because there's an important nuance there, and it's really about the fact that analytics is quite vast. There's a lot that you can dive into, but some areas are going to be much more relevant to education than others. And it's a good idea, at least initially, to focus on some of these areas. So we want to talk about getting familiar with the system, how it looks, generally how to navigate it, and also to define some of the key metrics which are, let's say, likely to be relevant to you in order to understand your existing setup, or indeed to plan your own process if you're at that kind of beginning stage. And also how to make sense of the reports. Like I said, there's a lot of data available, and a lot of it is available in just a few clicks, so it's quite overwhelming, and it's sensible to try and break down some of the key reports that may be most useful to people working in the education sector.
And if you think of all this a different way, what we're really trying to do is help you feel more comfortable with Google Analytics. It can be daunting, and some people may not open it or check it off and just for fear of, I don't know what this means, I don't know all these numbers are. We just want you to feel more comfortable, so hopefully that's our outcome at the end of today. We begin with really simple questions. Why Google Analytics? Well, it's quite universal. That's why it's free, so many people will readily adopt to use it. It comes from obviously Google, that has great respect and albeit control or presence on the internet. So it's the most used web analytics tool in the world, with over 28 million websites using it. And so it's data that's very universal. So people at other schools, people in other factors, other digital marketers who you may be working with will be familiar with Google Analytics. At the core, it allows you to see who's visiting your website, which pages they're visiting, and for how long.
And I think one of the key benefits of GA is to help in understanding the audience as well. So, where's your audience from? What devices are they using when they find you? What device are they using when they purchase from you? And we'll talk about that later on. Which language are they using? And there's, as I said, a whole load of data points besides that. And which source did they come from? Was it a Google search, like an organic Google search, or was it an advertisement, or was it somewhere else? What is the traffic doing when it comes from these different sources? Is it that your organic traffic is very engaged? Is your ad traffic taking the intended actions? And what are people doing when they come from your social channels through to the website? So essentially, Google Analytics is providing you with information to understand all these different concepts so that you can analyze what kind of ROI you're getting for all the different efforts that you have in place. And when we talk about understanding ROI, we should understand how a school sales funnel might look when compared to a more generic funnel or buyer's journey. And with schools, we find there's 4 main components. So you can see there the awareness, the consideration, the decision, and the enrollment. And each of these stages are typically categorized by certain behaviors or activities. So for example, someone who's in the awareness stage might arrive via their mobile, they might look at a few pages, they might leave, or they might sign up for something like a newsletter or kind of light touch. Someone who's at the consideration phase might download a brochure or maybe a price list, and they might spend some time researching and looking through a few pages, whereas someone who's further down yet and at a decision phase might click to request a callback, or someone who's decided that they want to enroll might go straight through to the application portal if you've got one, or the application documents to download. So if we take that a step further and we look at these 4 different stages in more of a kind of timeline, so we've got the 4 stages at the bottom there, we get another perspective on how these stages tie in with kind of sales activities. So from that new inquiry through to making an application, paying for the course ultimately. And bear in mind, this journey can be quite long term, sometimes even years, and it would depend on a few things that are quite specific to your school, how long that journey might typically be. So it could be to do with the seasonality or different enrollment in periods, or whether you're doing ongoing enrollment, or maybe the duration of the course, the cost of the course. All of these different things, of course, can have an effect on the length of that purchase decision. And let's not forget, people can also drop down further in the pipeline. Perhaps they might apply or enroll for a course straight off the bat without that whole kind of courting procedure beforehand.
Right.
So yeah, that's certainly possible, but again, it depends, and it's different for each institution.
Yeah, exactly. And we show the journey across the top and the pipeline, if you will, across the bottom, because this is how we're going to, connect. And these are the kind of the thoughts we're going to connect into Google Analytics, bringing it together by showing you how that funnel and the student journey apply here. For example, Google Analytics is going to help you measure elements in your website, and the elements you want to specifically measure are those that tie to your KPIs, so your organization's key performance indicators. So let's say your manager or your director has tasked you in marketing and communications, or wherever you may be, to increase new inquiries or increase completed applications. So those, as an organization, in either your quarterly or annual meetings, those have been identified as your KPIs, your goals or objectives you want to achieve. So what we're going to do is apply that to Google Analytics, where measuring new inquiries via your website means having people fill out a form such as contact us on the left. They click on that call to action. So to track new inquiries, we'll use Google Analytics to track every time someone fills out that form. To track applications submitted, we'll set GA to track how many times people see the thank you page on the application feature. This, of course, means that they've completed and submitted their application. It's done. It's not just started or initiated. And that allows you to look at these specific metrics and see how many per month, how many per semester or term. And that's really, really helpful. And it's kind of the ultimate use in the terms of our schools. This is what it looks like within Google Analytics. This is just one of the reports you can see in GA, and that is looking at the countries that are driving different traffic, where are the visitors coming from to your website. But on the right, we popped out the goals section because this is what those KPIs are defined as in Google Analytics. You can set up specific goals, and you can see goal 1 is the newsletter, goal 2 is the contact us click, goal 3 is the application submitted. So we're able to track those particular and specific KPIs and those clicks and actions on your website through Google Analytics.
And I think what's really interesting about this report is you can see quite specifically the total number of goals that have been completed, but in this case, it's broken down by country. So, and you can also see what percentage in the goal conversion rate, what percentage of those goals are in comparison to the total number of visitors from those countries. So you can start to understand which country traffic tends to be the highest converting on your website. So that's obviously just one example, but it starts to kind of hint towards some of the information that's going to be available to you here.
Exactly. So there are specific types of activities that can be tracked as goals in GA. The first is a URL destination. That is like the thank you page. If they visited that URL, that web page, then bing, the goal has been counted. You can also track visit duration or pages per visit, but most often it's something like a click or a call to action that they have taken, or they've clicked on an event to apply for it, or even they've clicked to watch a video. If you've spent a great deal of money recently to put up a new video, you may want to track how many views it's getting. You can set that as a goal. So these are the 4 types of goals that can be tracked in Google Analytics.
I think at this point we'd like to introduce the admin panel as well to the conversation. It's important to understand how to navigate around the admin section of Google Analytics. It's kind of like the back end of the Google Analytics account, where you can make changes and configurations at the kind of control center, where you can adjust most of the important elements of your analytics. So if we jump into the admin panel, we can see a few key points which are worth mentioning at this stage, and we've got them highlighted in green. So it's in this section of the analytics where you can view and configure your goals. You can allow new users and adjust user permissions. You can also build and configure different subsets of the data, which are known as views. And you can also start to filter out or filter your traffic accordingly in line with your wishes as well. So there's a lot going on in this admin panel. But just to speak more about that user and accounts and the structure of your Google Analytics, there's a few areas to address. So just in terms of terminology, we have the account, which you can see there is at the top of the slide. And this is the kind of overarching aspect of your Google Analytics. It's the topmost level of the GA organization, so that you can see all properties and all views. And if we take a step down, we have the properties, and the properties could be a website or a mobile app or even a standalone blog. And an example of what a property might be within education could be if it's a library, which is part of the main website. So a library page for the university library, which is part of the main website for the university, or for an English language school, a property might be the summer school, as an example. And then taking that a step further down, you can see the view. And under properties, you have views there that can allow you to build these subsets of analytical properties so that you can build your own unique configurations and settings and view certain subsets of data which are more specifically relevant to you. So just to clear up some of the terminology there, I felt that was important.
Absolutely. These are all the different places you'll go in the admin during, when you're setting up Google Analytics, if it isn't already on your website. Another important one is account user management, and that's basically identifying the users in your Google Analytics who can log in and be able to view the data in here. And you can see when you click on the green box, or what we've highlighted in the green box, it pops out this list of people, and this is the HEM team that has access. More importantly, on the right, you're allowed to enable to assign permissions. So levels of views that they can see, or accessibility to different parts of the data, or even to manage users. So that's important to be able to know who has access and what permissions they have. And toward that, we wanted to dig a little deeper into defining users. So first of all, the system itself, Google Analytics, says here's who can be or could be a user. Anyone with an email address associated with a Google account. So it needs to be an email address that's either a Gmail, or it could be the school's email address if your school's email system is Gmail. So that's a bottom line requirement for Google Analytics.
And we should talk about who also should be added as a user. So there's could and there should. Anyone who is a member of your team who's involved directly with Google Analytics configurement, or is designated to track certain elements of traffic or analysis, should obviously be given access as a user. and also any digital partners you have, such as HEM like us or someone similar, then anyone who's involved in making website changes, managing the SEO, monitoring ads, all of these different sections of digital marketing or your digital presence, it makes sense to add these people as users so that they can go about and do the required tasks or have the ability to do the required tasks. And yeah, so just to summarize there, there's the three different levels: the account level, the property level, and the view level, which tie in to the elements that I mentioned a couple of slides back about who can see what and what they can do and different permissions that they have. There's various levels there that can be assigned to each user.
Right. The next step in the admin interface that we want to feature for you is called filters. It's in that far right category, kind of midway across. Now, filters, this gets toward the data, and you can approach filters in two ways when you think of the data that you want to read. You can use filters to include just one segment, so that you're basically saying, show me only the data from Canadian users or from visitors who live in Canada. So this makes sure, in a kind of a coffee filter theme, if you will, that only Canada finds its way down into your end result and that other countries are filtered out. You can also approach filters in the idea of excluding specific traffic. And in this case, you definitely want to exclude internal traffic. So you're just saying to Google Analytics, don't show me internal traffic. That is me, my colleagues, my managers, and whatever, because we're clicking on the website an inordinate amount of time, maybe clicking on different links and calls to action, and we don't want that to noodle up the actual data. So by excluding internal team members or maybe board members, you'll get most accurate marketing measures in your end result data. So those are the two ways to approach filters. So just to recap, in the admin, the four core things that are going to be involved in your setup are setting goals, establishing your users, setting up your views, and setting up filters so that you can exclude or include specific traffic.
That's great. And I think, Scott, if we're looking to understand activities across our website and traffic, then it's important that we do this in an organized and structured way. And one way to make sure that we can view our traffic consistently is by ensuring that our global site tag is applied across each page of our website. So you can see the tracking code for global site tag is in the property settings there. And you can copy and paste this tracking code into the head of each page's coding that you wish to track. However, there's a slight problem with global site tag, and that it gets quite messy eventually, and if you might need to bring in some kind of developer or someone with expertise once things take off and start expanding, because it kind of grows arms and legs and can get a bit out of control. And for that reason, there's another entity which is called Google Tag Manager, so GTM. And we use GTM because adding the code to each page, the global site tag code that I mentioned, adding that to each page is very time consuming. And the GTM role is to enable you to apply code across the website in a much more straightforward way. This is especially the case if you want to track activities or events as well as just the traffic. That would require further code or pixel information to fire on each page. It gets complicated, so for that reason, Tag Manager is really helpful. If you are using traffic only, or you're only looking for traffic analytics, then the global site tag is enough. But as I said, for tracking other events and actions from other channels, such as your advertising channels or your social channels, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, then Tag Manager, Google Tag Manager, really comes into its own at that point.
Right.
So once we feel that we've got a handle on some of the key elements of the theory behind Google Analytics, let's talk about what it's like when you finally log in and start actually viewing the data. And usually you'll be presented with this screen, which to the untrained eye can seem quite daunting. And it's really tempting to kind of dive in to this menu on the left-hand side and start viewing all kinds of weird and wonderful data. But we suggest focusing on a few kind of ground key pointers, first of all. Do you want to maybe talk about that, Scott?
Sure. Because you're right. It's either daunting or it's fascinating, because you begin to go, okay, on the far left, I'm in audience, I'm in overview, and now I'm just taking in the numbers. And we want to be careful to allow you first, before you get into the numbers, to actually set a date range, because in the top right of your report, you'll see that December 1st to December 31st, and we popped it out for you. It allows you to select the date range of the data you see. It'll default to either last 7 days or last 4 days, but you decide kind of what's that core measure. And often for us, we look at a month's chunk of data. And so we've chosen December 1st to December 31st of last month, and we clicked the button right underneath that to compare that data. And it allows you in the drop-down to choose, do you want to compare it to the previous month or previous 31 days, or to the previous year, December of 2020. In this case, we've chosen the past period, so it's choosing 31 days because December's 31, November's 30. And so what this allows us to see, once we've set that and clicked apply, we can now go, whether you're in the overview report, but in this case, we went ahead and dropped down among audience and all the different reports you can measure about your audience. We chose to show the mobile report, which gives you an overview of, are they coming to your website via desktop, via mobile, via tablet? And in this blue oval, it shows you what we're going to see in terms of how we've set up our calendar. So you see that top line is our December 2021 traffic, and we can see the numbers across that line are having to do with that line of traffic, and we compare it just below to essentially October 31st or November 1st to the 30th. So the November traffic is just below it, and that is duplicated in each of the categories under that. So that's what your calendar is going to look like in looking at data.
And I think it's important to point out, Scott, also that for those who don't have analytics installed or maybe have recently installed it, you can't get data retrospectively. So really it's from this moment on, when you install it, then you'll be able to get the data from that point onwards, but you can't go back and get data when Google Analytics wasn't set up. So for some of you, for when that is the case, you won't be able to do these year-on-year comparisons if it wasn't set up this time last year. But I think what's really interesting, again, with this slide is that if we look at the goal completions on the right-hand side, we can start to understand, like we did with the countries, we can start to see, what kind of engagement levels are we getting in terms of conversions from these different sources. So instead of countries this time, we're breaking it down by device category, desktop, mobile, and tablet. And this is what I really enjoy about analytics, is where you can start to slice and dice up the information into different understandable or digestible sections, where you might see that desktop has a higher engagement rate than mobile, but maybe there's more mobile traffic, and you can start to make these kind of, or get these ideas or accrue different forms of information that allow you to make marketing decisions and move forward. So I find this absolutely fascinating. And if
I just wanted to say the other important thing to consider when you're looking at this report specifically, there's no right or wrong answer. So if your traffic is primarily desktop and not so much mobile, that's simply, there's nothing wrong with your web traffic or your website. It simply is an indicator of who is your audience. Most of the time during the day, they're seated at a computer. Whereas, typically and that'll be the case for, it differs by category of school, but we just want you to take the learning from it and understanding. It often informs our teams. If we're going to place ads on social media, we want to format it in a desktop format in this case, because a majority of our interested parties out there are on desktop. There's no right or wrong percentage of how many should be mobile, should be desktop.
I think that's a really good attitude, Scott, to have with it, is not to see results as necessarily right or wrong, but more to try and to ask why. That is the result, that's the data, but why? What does this mean? I think that's a good attitude to take. So let's stick with the same report. We're in the mobile overview report, and we can look at this broken down into 3 segments. And the first segment is the acquisition segment. So within acquisition, we have, as you can see, users, new users, and sessions. So let's break that down because they sound very similar, but they have slightly different meanings. So the number of users is the number of people who have begun a session within the allotted time frame, which Scott mentioned. And then we have new users, which is the number of first-time users on your site within that same time frame. And then lastly, we have sessions, which is the total number of sessions within that time frame. And remember that why this is different is because that some users may have had more than one session. So again, it sounds very similar, but there are slight nuances between these different data points.
And the next, the next category of data is behavior. So looking more at what did they do once they came to the website. The first metric is called bounce rate, and that simply means someone came to the homepage and left without touching anything within 30 seconds. So they basically kind of read what they wanted to read, and that's meant in many cases in mobile, that you think of yourself on a mobile phone, you go to a website, you kind of read what you want initially on the homepage, and you might pop out and go to something else. In the case of desktop, it's more an indicator of someone coming and saying, oh, well, probably not, this is not for me, or maybe I just don't have time right now. Keep in mind, bounce rate can be high, and don't, again, it's not a right or wrong answer. That can be, even for schools, as high as 60 to 80 some percent. That's just kind of our way of life as browsers, right? We hop in, we hop out quite quickly. So don't take offense or concern to that. What you're really more concerned about is pages per session or average session duration. So in pages per session, how many pages on your website did they view each time they visited? And you want this to be more than 2. You'd love it to be 3 or 4. That's grand. Right now, if we're at 1 point something, we'd like that to be higher. For average session duration, we'd like that to be a minute. And 2 to 3 to 4 minutes means someone's really, truly interested, and that's rare when you look at greater groups of audience, like all desktop visitors. So, but it's basically how long they spent during that visit to your website. How long did they spend on your site?
I think if we take a real world example there, Scott, if you looked at, let's say, your mobile traffic bounce rate, let's just take that as an example, and you notice that the mobile traffic bounce rate was significantly higher than the desktop bounce rate, you might start, it's not necessarily a bad result, like Scott said it, but if you start to think, why might that be? One thing you could do is, for example, just take out your phone and go to the website, go to your own website, have a look around. If the session duration was very low, if the bounce rate was very high and the number of pages per session was very low compared to the other categories, then you might then you have a look around and you see, well, maybe our website isn't particularly mobile friendly. You have a look and you say, this is actually very difficult to navigate around. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's something we have to review. So again, it's not right or wrong, but it can indicate that there may be other issues at play, or so it really is quite fascinating.
For sure, that's a great example. Yeah.
Well, let's jump to the last part, which is the conversions, and I've talked about that a little bit throughout the presentation today through the webinar. And you might get the sense as we go from left to right that we're kind of traveling down that sales or buyer's journey that we talked about earlier on. So more about engagement through towards conversion and acquisition through to conversion, and it kind of reflects that sales pipeline a little bit. And in this conversion section, we can see we've selected all goals. So of all the goals that you can have on the website, they're all present here, and you can see the number of goal completions, which is, as it sounds, the number of goals that were completed coming from these different categories: desktop, mobile, and tablet. And you can also see that total number as a percentage of the total users, which again presents you information such as, oh, perhaps our desktop traffic is more likely to engage than our mobile traffic. Why might that be? Maybe people are making purchasing decisions, maybe they're downloading brochures, they'd rather do that on their desktop than their mobile. Makes sense. So again, these are really interesting stats that can help you to understand your data and to understand your audience and their behaviors in greater detail.
So we wanted to give you, we've kind of picked apart this one report from left to right, we wanted to give you a look at another, what we find is a really key, important report, and kind of pick out some key metrics within it as our last kind of foray into, you know, this is a starter's guide. So we're really just trying to help you see where are the reports, some key ones, and what are the things you want to look for when going there? Where do you want your eyes to focus?
And I think, Scott, this is, if HEM, we do, as many of you will know in attendance, that we do a free assessment. And a part of that is that we look at the analytics together with the stakeholder at the school. And this is one of the first reports we'll look at, definitely.
Yeah, the source medium is really a key report for us. As you can see on the left, it's below the audience category. Now we're into the acquisition category of reports. And we've chosen the subcategory of all traffic, and the specific report is source medium. And what this tells us is what digital sources are sending traffic to our website? Where are we getting visitors from? And not only the sources, but specifically within. So for example, our #1 driver of traffic in this report is Google, but not just Google, but we understand now it's Google organic traffic. And this tells us that this is traffic of people who did a search on Google, hit return, got the results, and chose your website directly from those search results, not including any ads. So organically, no advertising involved. So this is a really helpful indicator of how do we show on search results, and is this driving a whole lot of traffic to our website? So in the blue circle, it's one of the data points we want to focus on. We're looking really basically at December's Google organic traffic, November's Google traffic, percentage change from one to the next. So yes, that's down 22%. So rather than having a large exclamation point hover over my head with that, I'm going to think, okay, well, November is a very, very busy month for us. December, with all the holidays, is very, very, well, so much lighter. So that's more indicative of the calendar year than it is, we think, anything else. It is a data point we'll check in January, though, to see how that fared.
Yeah, definitely, and I think if we take it to the next step, which is in the red circle, the direct traffic. And direct traffic is traffic that type in, well, largely it's the traffic which types in the URL of your website directly into their browser. And this can indicate two things. One, that the user is familiar with your brand and recognizes your brand. And it can also be indicative of return customers or frequent visitors, because typically when people will type in or begin to type in the URL, it will autofill and they'll press enter and come back in again. So the direct traffic is quite often up there as one of the top sources, and it's usually people who are familiar with the brand and are quite often are visiting again. And if we look at the yellow boxes of the conversion traffic, it's a kind of different way of looking at the same numbers. So as we know from the device reports and the country reports we looked at, these different sources will have different conversion rates. And in the yellow boxes, we've highlighted a few of them. You can see there that the organic traffic is converting at about 0.38, 0.33. The direct traffic is at about 0.52 and just over 1%. And then the emails kind of between 0.5 and 0.8, roughly speaking. So this would change for each individual school. You'll all have different, slightly different rates here. Some might be much higher, some a bit lower. But again, this allows you to see not just where the popular sources are, but which of these sources is the best in converting that traffic into actionable items or events or completed goals.
Yeah, I like to think of it as on those metrics in the left and the middle show us quantity, and these metrics on the right in the boxes show us quality of traffic. So are they a high quality visitor? Are they clicking on things that are indicative of a really interested prospective student? So that's another way of thinking of it. Yeah, for sure. And the last metric we want to kind of point out in the purple box, it's the third driver of traffic to the website. And in this case, it's coming from our own emails that go out. The reason this is important and kind of why we're showing you the source medium report, it's very much, loosely said, an ROI type of report. It helps you to see, am I getting a return on my investment? Now, sometimes that means money you're putting toward ads or money you're putting toward other things. But in this case, it could be an investment of time. Now, say, for example, last year we didn't have an email plan or program or structure. So we weren't sending out emails regularly to the contacts in our database. But then if at some point we've decided, okay, you know what, we're going to create a strategy, create an intentional plan to send out emails to drive traffic to the website. It's going to take someone's time, 5 hours in a week, whatever it may be. You're able to come to this report to measure over time, is that paying off for us? Is it driving traffic to the website? Is it driving goal completions? So we haven't invested $1, but we have assigned some of your team's time to a task, and we want to see if that's paying off. So in this case, that email source is helpful to see.
Great.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, as Archie said, we offer the free assessment of your Google Analytics. And so it's at this point, we want to just kind of wrap up by offering that opportunity for you guys to contact us to say, yeah, please take a look at this with me. And maybe that first time through, it is easier to do one-on-one with someone like us who could kind of walk you through those key reports. So please feel free to request a free demo of a free walkthrough of your Google Analytics. So it's really useful. The other aspect we wanted to share with you is that Higher Education Marketing is offering an academy online course on Google Analytics, getting into much greater depth. It begins in just a couple of weeks. So it starts on January 13th. You may already have an email invitation in your inbox. If not, please contact us because we'd be happy to send that information to you.
Absolutely. So if indeed you are looking to have a chat about your analytics, you'd like me to have a look at it with you, feel free just to pop me a message or give me a call, and I'd be happy to do so. Normally it takes about half an hour or so, and we can do that together just to maybe cut through the reads a little bit. Should we check if there's any questions going?
Sure. The first one's easy. Yes, you are going to receive a recording of this webinar. You'll get it via email in a couple of days. You'll also receive, in addition to the recording, you will receive the deck so that you can look at the slides if you want. The other question beyond that is Google Analytics on my website? And how do I know? And the answer there is, well, if you don't know, if you don't have a login to Google Analytics, then that is your indicator, because it's not automatically on your website. It's something that you need to pursue. So you can type in Google Analytics on your, just in a Google search. It'll take you to the home and it'll walk you through how to determine or identify your URL, your website, and try to gain access if someone had set it up years ago, or to basically start it yourself, which is kind of what we went through in the beginning as we looked at the admin. So you do need to initiate this yourself. It's not automatically there.
And I think quite often we find, particularly with smaller privately owned schools, that people will be unsure. They've had somebody set up analytics maybe some years ago. It's not something they've reviewed recently. So they might not be sure about how to get their account access, or which email address it's linked to, and that can sometimes cause a bit of a headache. So if you're not sure, it's good just to start making inquiries and try to find out who or where the account ownership is, because that's really valuable information. And there are other layers to this, like Scott and I have indicated today, in terms of setting up goals, setting up filters. These are also things that do not come as standard with analytics once analytics is installed. These are things that have to be set up. So it may well be that you have an analytics account, but it doesn't have much configuration, in which case these need to be added. You can do it yourself if you have the time and the patience, or if you prefer for a third party to do it, that's also an option, of course.
Yeah. And if you have additional questions, we really recommend that Academy is a great place to go, or the assessment. Because in the assessment, we'll just have you log into Google Analytics on your end of the screen, you share your screen, and we'll walk you through reports of your system so that you can become more familiar with it. But in the academy, they're going to teach you how to really not just take the reports at face value, which we just did, but then they're going to help you to manipulate some of that data and cross-reference it, for example, so that you can really come out with more usable insights that you're able to. The whole idea here is to learn so that you can apply what you've learned to your next digital marketing strategy. Now you know more about your audience and their behaviors on your website.
Yeah, there's many more layers to the onion, I think, Scott, which people would be pleased to peel back. So, but we've reached the time limit there on the day. We want to be respectful of everyone's time, so I guess we'll wrap it up now.
Yes, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Have a great day, everyone, and speak soon.